Alright, today's lesson is on multiplying integers. Okay. When we go ahead and multiply and divide integers, we have a little hint for you called the sleeping dog here. We have the multiplication division, and then we have two subtraction symbols for like a dog's eyes closed and a plus symbol for its nose. So we're going to go ahead and use this to help us figure out if an answer is negative or positive. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cover up the sign for the integers you are dividing. Let's add in here or multiplying. The one that is remaining is the sign of your answer. If you have more than two numbers, you just do it two at a time. So what that means is, so for example, I have 2 times negative 6. Let's go ahead and draw my triangle here. The 2 negatives and the positive there. 2 is a positive, so I'm going to take my positive and I'm going to get rid of it. And I have negative 6. It's a negative, so I'm going to get rid of one of my negatives here. Because I have a negative left over, I know my answer to my problem is going to be a negative. Okay. Then all I need to do is multiply my numbers, 2 and 6. So 2 times 6 is 12. So my answer is negative 12. Okay. Now to prove this, if I want to turn my multiplication into a repeated addition, I can do that. So if I go ahead and say 2 times negative 6, I know that I'm just adding negative 6 twice together. So it's just the same as negative 6 plus negative 6. Now if I add negative 6 and negative 6, I get negative 12. So that's where that comes from. Let's try number 2. Negative 3 times negative 4. Draw my triangle here. Put 2 negatives and a positive. I have negative times negative. So let's get rid of my 2 negatives. It leaves me a positive symbol, which means I know my answer is going to be positive. And 3 times 4 is 12. Number 3. Triangle. Negative 24 divided by negative 6, so get rid of 2 negatives, leaving a positive. That's what I know my answer is going to be. 24 divided by 6 is 4. And there's my answer. And then I have number 4, 18 divided by 3. This is a problem you guys have seen before. It's a positive divided by a positive. There's no need for me to draw the triangle or the sleeping dog when I have 2 positives. So it's just 18 divided by 3 is 6. Okay. Alright, what I'd like to go ahead and do now is pause your video. I want you to try these 6 problems. Notice number 3, how you actually have to do 6 times negative 2 first. Then you use the answer of that to multiply it by negative 3. So you should have 2 triangles there. Alright, so number 1, negative 12 times 7 should be negative 14. Number 2, negative 6 times negative 8. I'm multiplying 2 negatives, so my answer is going to be a positive, which is 48. Number 3, I do 6 times negative 2 is equal to 12. Then I do negative 12 times negative 3 because I brought that down. 2 negatives times each other is a positive, giving me an answer of 36. Number 4, negative 48 divided by negative 6. It's 2 negatives, so my answer is going to be positive 8. Number 5, I have negative 32 divided by 8. I have 1 negative, 1 positive, which means I know my answer is going to be negative, so negative 4. And then 55 divided by 11, both positives, my answer is 5. Alright, now we're going to look at exponents. Okay? Whenever we see a problem with exponents, such as we have here, negative 5 to the 4th power, we're multiplying it 4 times. Okay, so we're doing negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5. So I'm expanding it out. Then I'm going to go ahead and from left to right, I'm just going to multiply them. So negative 5 times negative 5, I have 2 negatives, which means I know my answer is going to be positive, so positive 25. Bring down my negative 5 times negative 25. I'm sorry, times negative 5. I'm going to go ahead and do my next 2 here. I have a positive and a negative, which means I know my answer is going to be a negative. 25 times 5 is 125. And bring down my last negative 5. Then I have 2 negatives now, multiplying by each other, which means my answer is going to be positive, and I get an answer of 625. let's try our next one, negative 2 to the third power. Because this is the third power, I'm going to go ahead and write 3 of them. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. Get rid of my 2 negatives, I'm left with a positive. And I go ahead and bring down my times negative 2. Do another triangle. I have a negative and a positive, which means my answer is going to be negative, giving me an answer of negative 8. Alright, you're going to use your rules as well, besides exponents, to complete averages too. Expand this out a little bit. Now when we find an average, we are adding up the values using our integer rules, so we're going to be adding each of these this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We're going to add them all up. And then we're going to divide by how many values. We have 5 values, so whatever our answer is, we're going to divide by 5. So the first thing I do is negative 1 plus 3. They have different symbols, so I'm going to subtract them, which gives me a 2. It's going to stay positive because 3 is larger than 1. Then I do 2 plus 2 is 4. Nice and easy. 4 plus negative 5. I have different symbols, a negative and a positive, which means I'm going to subtract them. So 5 minus 4 is 1. My 5 has the greater value than the 4, which means I'm going to go ahead and do negative 1. And then I do negative 1 plus 6. Different symbols, so I have to subtract them. 6 minus 1 is 5. 6 has the greater value than the 1, the bigger number. So I have $5 as my final answer here. Divided by 5 because that's how many values I used, and I get an answer of $1. Alright, so go ahead and try a few problems yourself. We have 2 exponent problems for you to try, negative 3 to the power of 3, negative 4 to the power of 2, and then I have an average problem for you to try as well. So pause the video and test this out. Alright, number 1, you should have got an answer of negative 27. Number 2, positive 16. And number 3, should have got an average of $4. $20 divided by 5 is equal to $4.